On February 3rd, the Korean government announced measures to set up tourism weeks in the spring and fall. The goal is to evenly distribute the nation's tourism demand, which currently peaks in the summer.
President Baek also highlighted
We got the details from Eoh Jin-joo, our presidential office correspondent. The government is considering closing elementary, middle, and high schools for short vacations during the tourism weeks. In addition, the government said that discounts would be given for trains and lodging, and at restaurants and traditional markets, while vacation bonuses would be handed out to workers. Many are focusing on the developments in domestic tourism, which is being worked on by the public and the government.
A big day ahead.
This week's been a hectic one for Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee, with breaking news and connections from the Unification Ministry. It's because of reunions for separated families. On Monday, North Korea proposed holding working-level talks with the South to discuss resuming the long-suspended reunions for families divided by the Korean War. The talks were held on the 5th. The two Koreas decided to hold the reunions of separated families from February 20th to the 25th, and they had an amicable agreement about holding the event with 100 people from the South and 100 people from the North. But less than a day later, North Korea changed its mind and said that it might reconsider holding the reunions, citing South Korea's military drills with the United States as the reason for the change of heart. The reunions of separated families has a cloudy future ahead, and we will keep a close watch on Hwang Sung-hee's news updates.
The Olympic flame traveled a total of 65,000 kilometers, the longest journey in the history of the Winter Olympics. The Olympic flame finally arrived in Sochi, Russia on February 5th. Prior to the commencement of the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics, reporter Song Ji-sun delivered the exciting news about Sochi, including the arrival of the South Korean winter sports athletes, which includes a total of 120 people, the opening speech of the IOC president, and news about UN chief Ban Ki-moon. Ji-sun will bring us news about the extravagant opening ceremony, as well as the competition on the ice and snow for 16 days.
Arirang News.
One of China's major holidays, the Lunar New Year. Thanks to that, Seoul, South Korea enjoyed an influx of overseas visitors. Chinese tourists flooded many parts of the city. We go with Arirang TV news reporter Connie Lee to see the impact from the increased number of Chinese tourists.
Recent data show that the number of Chinese tourists actually broke records last year. And so I was wondering why this was the case. And also, I liked how the businesses were being creative with their marketing strategies. And so that's why I wanted to do this story.
Myeongdong is the main downtown area in Seoul. Today, it's the first destination for reporter Connie Lee.
네, 또 중국어 이렇게 약간 그런 거 간판 그런 거 있잖아요.
Despite the cold spell, Myeongdong was full of people and energy. What especially stood out were the many signs and banners written in Chinese. And there was an abundance of Chinese tourists.
Nanjang City, so it's south. South.
Connie tries to conduct an interview with a Chinese man who gives off a good impression. But she breaks out in sweat because of the language barrier.
1 minute. 중국어 하시나요?
아, 지금 저희 중국어 가능한 인원이 없고 저 영어랑 일본어인데
아, 그래요?
혹시 만약에 통역이 필요하신 거예요?
네, 그냥 간단하게 중국어 없나요? 그래서 그분이 오시면 중국 사람이랑 이렇게 인터뷰를 좀 하면 좋겠어요.
While waiting for the Chinese translator,
from China? China. Vacation here?
she sees another crew of Chinese tourists traveling together.
like what? Shopping like what? Like clothes?
And when she barely continues with a conversation in English,
안녕하세요. 니하오. 제가 기자인데요. 여기 잠깐 나왔는데 중국인 관광객들이랑 짧게 인터뷰를 하고 싶은데
네.
혹시 통역 조금 해줄 수 있어요?
중국어 할 줄 아는 거 아니에요?
저요? 아니요, 못해서
네.
네, 다른 나라보다는 왜 한국으로 오신
来
건가요?
韩国的目的是个比较近点儿还是？
这个国家对这个环境保护这一块非常好，非常好。天是蓝的，
아,
네.
하늘이 파란 게 자연환경 보존이 잘 된 나라라고 하시죠.
这个国家公民的整体素质比较高。
아, 문화적 수준이 높대요.
쉐쉐. 그럼 다시 한국에 올 예정인가요? 아니면 다시 한국에 오시고 싶은 마음이
你
있나요?
打算再来韩国吗？
以后要把全家都带来。
아,是吗? 네. 이제는 한국 돌아가셔서 가족들 모두 데리고 오신다는데.
오케이. 뭘 하고 싶은가요, 제일 가족들이랑 여기? It's a hot location for a lot of foreign tourists, and especially the Chinese tourists, who are the largest group of tourists that made their way to Korea last year. And so Myeongdong was the place to go for this story. And so when we went, it was very obvious that a lot of Chinese tourists were there. Just walking by, you can hear a lot of Chinese speakers and different translators speaking in Chinese. And so it was very obvious that a lot of Chinese people are here in Korea.
To come here for shopping.
Oh, for shopping?
this time she meets a female tourist who is in Korea to do some shopping.
The clothes, something like that.
Thankfully, she could do the interview in English.
Food. Can I just ask, what is your favorite thing to do here in Korea?
And I come here for shopping and sightseeing, something like that.
What do you like to buy the most in Korea?
Clothes and cosmetics, I like it.
Compared with other countries you visited, what makes Korea different, or what do you like best about Korea?
The traffic is very convenient and the people are very nice.
Thank you. What's your name?
The two conversed well,
Yeah.
입이 얼었어.
but the interview wasn't that easy because of the sub-zero temperatures.
보세요? 거기 가서 또 하려고요.
Connie visited a duty-free shop in Seoul. This time Connie is inside, so she doesn't have to worry about the cold now.
지금 중국 사람들 많은데 가시면 돼요?
네.
This is supposed to be a famous shopping path, but the venue was overcrowded with Chinese people.
작년에도 계셨잖아요.
네,
그쵸?
네.
작년에 춘절 때랑 뭐 다르게 마케팅한 거 아니면 좀 다른 점?
예를 들어 삼성 작년도 자동차를 준비했는데 올해는 저희는 자동차뿐만 아니라 굴ጥ발 같은 거 중국 사람은 황금 좋아하니까 굴ጥ발 같은 것도 준비했습니다.
Even a marketing strategy has been prepared to captivate Chinese customers who typically spend a lot of money when they come to Korea. The increasing demands of Chinese people can be sensed at the scene.
Well, just going around Seoul and passing different malls, you can already see big signs or big playing cards that say that have Chinese letters or signs that are written in Chinese. And so obviously you see these malls that are trying to cater to the Chinese tourists. And so that's why I decided to go to one of the malls in Seoul to see just how effective this kind of marketing is and the different ways that they are kind of approaching the Chinese tourists. And so knowing that they had different promotional events and different giveaways to Chinese clients, I thought it would be a very good scene to shoot. And of course, we were expecting a lot of people at the malls, but I don't think anyone expected the malls to be that crowded.
Connie asked for a lot of things to capture the live scenes.
맞아요, 부장님. 그 결제하는 것도 촬영할 수 있어요?
중국 사람 대상, 그 한국 사람 대상하고 일본 사람 대상 다 다른데. 네.
있긴 있는데
네.
담당자 이제 얘기하는 거는 이제 물론 중국 사람들 위주로 더 많이 생겼다.
네, 더 많이 생기고.
The Chinese language could be heard all over the place, and it felt at times like we were in China. The interviews are an important aspect of the story here as well.
플러스 기다린 사람을 한번 제가 잡아볼게요. 기다리는 동안에 좀 진짜 짧게. 아, 괜찮아요?
괜찮대요.
아, 괜찮아요? 니하오, 쉐이쉐이. 어떻게 할까요? 부장님 여기 인터뷰 하실 분인데요. 네, 그래서 여기 줄에 되게 오랫동안 서 있던 것 같았는데 얼마큼 이렇게 기다렸나요?
看你刚才在排队嘛，你等了多长时间？大概
40分钟到1小时，反正时间蛮久的。
한 40분 동안 줄 섰대요.
40분 동안 줄 쓴 이유가 뭘 사려고 지금 뭘 샀나요?
我买了雪花秀，还有赫拉，都是韩国本土的一些化妆品。
서라소하고 헤라 같은 한국 화장품 샀어요.
일단 보여주세요. 이렇게 산 거를 혹시 보여주세요. 산 거를.
你给他看一下你买的东西。
赫拉BB霜。
여기까지 하겠습니다.
시시해.
여기까지. 쉐이쉐이.
The interviews continue.
안녕하세요. 니하오.
那个你好，那个他是韩国的那个阿里郎电视台的记者，然后就想
괜찮아요? 네. 오셨는데 분위기가 어때요? 지금 분위기가
你
한국에.
们来了韩国之后觉得韩国怎么样啊？
觉得非常好。
좋대요.
그 중국에서 인기가 많았나요? 한국으로 오는 거가? 왜 한국을 선택을
在
했나요?
中国，然后就是来韩国旅游是现在比较人气的一个选择嘛，然后就大家都很喜欢来韩国嘛。
是的，是的，大家都会选择来这儿啊。
한국 여행은 인기 되게 많고 사람들 대부분 사람 한국을 오고 싶다고 그래요.
This time, Connie moves over to the souvenir section, which is just as popular as the cosmetics section. There's a wide variety of souvenirs from Korean delicacies and kimchi to chocolate.
저분한테 좀 물어볼 거가 있는데 초콜릿을 엄청 많이 사오고 있는데.
네.
안녕하세요. 안녕하세요.
是从中国来的吗？
인터뷰 짧게 할게요. 네, 짧게.
我觉得回去送那个朋友，觉得尝尝韩国的风味儿。
Connie pays careful attention to what the many people have to say.
When I was trying to get interviews from the different Chinese tourists, of course I looked at different people of different ages because I wanted to get just a diverse group of voices for my story. And so I looked at young couples and middle-aged women and also just older men, and to see what their reasons were for coming to Korea, what they like to buy in Korea, and of course the answers change depending on the age group. And there are also times when you meet people and you ask them a question, you don't really get the answer that you want, or sometimes their answers are not as clear as you would want them to be. And so a lot of times I do more interviews. I try to get as many interviews as possible and then kind of pick and choose for my story.
The next day.
첫 질문은요, 이제 중국 관광객들이 점점 증가하고 있는데 이유 좀 설명해 주세요.
일단 중국인들의 소득 수준 향상과 그에 따른 해외 수요 증가가 가장 큰 원인으로 생각되고요. 그 외에도 한국과 중국과의 지리적 근접성 및 한국의 비자 발급의 편의성, 한류로 인한 국가 이미지 제고 효과 등이 복합적으로 작용된 결과라고 생각합니다.
그 많은 중국 관광객들이 오실 거니까 혹시 한국 경제력으로 효과가 어느 정도일까요?
중국인 관광객 1000만 시대가 도래할 경우 약 68조 원의 생산 유발 효과와 약 90만 명의 취업 유발 효과 및 GDP의 약 1.6%에 달하는 부가가치 유발 효과가 발생할 것으로 전망하고 있습니다.
The influx of Chinese tourists has changed the image of downtown Seoul. So Connie carefully goes over the economic effects as well. Chinese tourists have become a big factor in the Korean tourism market, and domestic hotels have also gotten busier.
지금 미리 세팅해 놓으신 것 같아요. 이게 이제 그 중국 손님들 위해서 추가로 배치되는 조식입니다.
일단은 안녕하세요.
촬영 도와주실 손경희 셰프님이고요.
안녕하세요. 이카니 기자입니다. 그 셰프분이 나랑 이렇게 설명을 할 거예요. 이거는 뭐고 이거는 뭐고. 그래서 약간 자연스럽게 이렇게 투샷으로 나한테 설명하는 거를 이제 보여주고, 포인트가요. 재료가 이제 8가지 사용한다고.
네. 메뉴가 2가지 지금 준비되어 있는데요.
이것도 이거
네네, 야채도 8가지고.
네, 처음 여기부터 설명을 하고, 이거는 뭐뭐다.
네네.
또 8가지 뭐 재료가 들어가 있다. 이거 이렇게. 네, 이 요리를 좀 설명해 주세요.
네, 중국 분들이 좋아하시는 8가지 해물을 가지고 해물덮밥을 준비하였습니다. 사용되는 해물로는 대구, 연어, 오징어, 해삼, 새우, 관자, 전복, 홍합이 사용이 됩니다.
There are 8 different ingredients, and the cooking time is also 8 minutes. This hotel has employed strategic use of the number 8 to captivate Chinese customers' attention. So Connie prepares her stand-up with the kitchen as the backdrop.
몸 좀 틀어. 들어가.
In China, the number 8 is associated with prosperity and wealth, so it's considered a lucky number. So that's why this restaurant has created a special menu just for its Chinese guests. Now, all the dishes on that menu include 8 different ingredients or have been cooked for 8 minutes. People in China believe that the number 8 is a lucky number because it's associated with wealth and prosperity. The hotel came up with a menu that have dishes that either include 8 different ingredients or have been cooked for 8 minutes, and so they try to incorporate the number 8 into the dishes on their special menu. So I thought that was very interesting, and so I thought shooting inside the kitchen is something different and something that could be fun to show. And I also did my stand-up there. So last year, nearly 4 million Chinese tourists came to Korea. That was a record breaker. It's a record breaker. So it's not surprising that different businesses here in Korea are now specifically targeting the Chinese visitors.
These days, approximately 4 million Chinese tourists visit Korea each year. And by walking around, meeting with lots of people, reporter Connie Lee captured why Chinese tourists are flocking to Korea in record numbers.
On that menu include 8 different ingredients or have been cooked for 8 minutes.
네, 안녕하세요. 저 18시 뉴스 문건영입니다.
문건영 반갑습니다.
네. I remember this is about the 5th time that we've seen a bird flu outbreak in this country since 2003.
Right.
So in the previous years it wasn't the H5N1 strain.
Right. Korea experienced 4 times, the highly pathogen bird flu prior to current outbreak, and the previous one, H5N1 strain, and that's it.
So it's the same strain?
No, now it's H5N8 strain. So
okay.
M protein different.
Okay. Well, it's very difficult for non-experts like myself, but it's a different strain. Okay.
The previous 4 times since 2003, that H5N1 strain, but now it's H5N8. So H5N1 strain is widely circulating in the dog or chicken farm in the Southeastern Asia and China.
Right.
But H5N8 strain, the current outbreak in Korea, this is the first time ever in the dog farm. Now they spread chicken, as you know.
It's kind of very scary for average Korean living in Korea right now, because I don't know if scientists or medical personnel are absolutely sure that this will not spread to humans, because this is a never before seen strain.
Any kind of avian flu, they can infect a human, especially in the lung tissue.
Oh, really? So this can be infected to humans as well?
Right, definitely. But this strain it doesn't have the property to infect upper respiratory like nose and trachea, because the flu virus, right? They bind to the surface some receptor, so-called on the cell,
right.
And avian flu receptor exists in the human lung, not in the upper respiratory tract. So this is highly pathogenic avian flu, right? If we have any chance to infect in the lung, the survival possibility less than 40%. It's very dangerous virus.
Oh, so tell us, doctor, can we eat our chicken and can we eat duck and?
Every flu virus, including avian flu, right, human flu, is very sensitive to the temperature. But the question is that if I try to eat already cooked chicken or dog meat, it's okay. But if I try to make cook, I mean, in case you buy the chicken or dog meat in the market and bring the kitchen, right? During the processing.
In the process of cooking, you might.
Very dangerous.
There is another bird flu outbreak in China and Taiwan, and I suppose, and it's emerging in Hong Kong as well, and it's the H7N9 virus.
H7N9 virus. Let me tell you, that virus is more dangerous to human than H5N8.
Right, because we've already seen many deaths from the H7N9 this time.
H5N8, right? They can infect only lung.
Right.
But the H7N9, they can infect upper respiratory tract. I mean the nose and trachea. So H7N9 is highly adapted to humans. It's totally different from H5N1, H5N8.
Very interesting. All right, we will continue our discussion downstairs. We will see you downstairs very shortly. We are joined live in the studio by Dr. Sung-hee, Professor of Veterinary Medicine at Chungnan National University. Dr. Seo, welcome to the program.
Welcome. Current Korean outbreak strain is H5N8 bird flu. Every avian flu, they can infect human. This virus can infect, they spread all your internal organs, including brain. The best way is to try to clean, especially you need to wash your hands.